You wake up, but it feels like someone else's morning. The bed is yours, the room is familiar, but the silence feels like a stranger. And deep in your chest, a soft, aching truth you've been too tired to name. This life doesn't feel like yours. Not entirely, not fully. Somewhere between doing what's right and doing what's expected, you stopped choosing. You kept moving, because what else were you supposed to do? Maybe you picked the job that looked stable. Maybe you stayed in the relationship that felt safe. Maybe you smiled when you wanted to scream, and agreed when every part of you whispered no. At first, it seemed noble, responsible, adult. But over time, the applause faded, and all you were left with was a version of you that looks alive, but feels like a ghost. Because no one told you that betraying yourself slowly hurts more than any heartbreak. That every time you say yes when your soul says no, a part of you drifts further into silence, a quiet death, one choice at a time. And now, here you are, carrying a life built from other people's dreams, wondering why it feels so heavy, why your chest tightens at night, why joy feels distant, why you're always almost okay, but never fully free. But what if I told you, this pain isn't your enemy? What if this discomfort, this quiet rebellion in your body, is not your breakdown, but your beginning? What if everything you're feeling isn't a sign that you're lost, but that you're finally waking up to the truth, to yourself, to the life that's been waiting behind the one you never chose? Because maybe the ache in your chest isn't sadness. Maybe it's the sound of your soul trying to breathe again. You didn't notice it at first. How the world slowly handed you masks and taught you to wear them like skin. It began with simple things. A compliment when you stayed quiet. A frown when you spoke your truth. Subtle cues, unspoken rules. And so, you adapted. Not out of weakness, but survival. Because belonging felt safer than honesty. Because being liked felt more urgent than being whole. You learned how to smile in rooms that drained you. You practiced small talk like a script. You studied the art of disappearing in plain sight until it became muscle memory. That's the thing about self-betrayal. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It slips in gently, like a friend offering help. Just fit in. Don't cause trouble. Be easy to love. And so you carved pieces of yourself away, just to fit through the narrow doors of approval. You became a character in your own story, a version of yourself designed to offend no one, to be palatable, to be praised. But here's the quiet tragedy. The more you edited yourself, the more invisible you became. Not to others, to you. And now, you don't even remember when you stopped choosing. When the voice inside your chest became so faint, you could barely hear it over the noise of everyone else's expectations. It's a silent theater, where you play every role except your own. You're the good friend, the reliable partner, the hard worker, the peacemaker. But when the curtain falls and the stage lights dim, there's a silence that follows you home. A silence that feels like a question you don't know how to answer. Whose life is this? Whose dreams am I chasing? Who would I be if I wasn't afraid? And maybe you tell yourself it's too late, that this is just how life is, that everyone feels this way. But somewhere, deep in the marrow of your being, a truth still burns. You were not born to perform. You were not born to be consumed by roles. You were not born to please a world that never asked who you truly are. There is a part of you, still alive beneath the layers, still untouched by applause or criticism, that remembers what it felt like to move without permission, to speak without rehearsing, to feel without apology. And the more you try to silence it, the louder it becomes. Because truth doesn't die, it waits. It waits in the pauses between conversations, in the tears you cry without knowing why, in the dreams that haunt you, even when you're awake. The truth is, you've been living behind glass. You can see the world, you can almost touch it, but something always separates you. Fear, guilt, shame. The belief that if you step out of line, you'll be alone, that love is conditional, that acceptance must be earned. But what if that's the real illusion? What if the love you've been chasing by shrinking yourself is the very love that cannot hold you? What if the version of you that everyone accepts is not the version you were meant to become? And what if breaking the illusion means losing their approval, but gaining your soul? Because authenticity is not a rebellion. It's a return to the self you abandoned just to survive. And maybe that's what healing is, not becoming someone new, but coming home to the one you left behind, the one who still knows how to breathe without asking for permission. Drop the mask for just one moment. In the comments, write the truth you've never said out loud. Whose life have you been living? What part of you did you bury just to be loved? No filters, no edits, just the real you. As if someone finally is ready to listen. There are wounds that scream, and there are wounds that whisper, quietly, persistently, shaping your life from the shadows. The ones that whisper are the hardest to see. The heartbreak you never grieved, the dream you talked yourself out of, the moments you told yourself, it's not a big deal, when it was. It's not always a loud trauma that changes us. Sometimes it's the quiet absence of being seen. The silence after we speak our truth and no one hears. The ache of smiling while your soul is collapsing inside. And slowly, almost gently, that pain starts building a version of you. One that knows how to stay silent, how to stay strong, how to hold everything in and pretend it doesn't hurt. But just because you learned to carry it, doesn't mean it was ever meant to be yours. Because the pain didn't just shape your behavior, it shaped your identity. It told you who to be in order to avoid being hurt again. Be dependable, be quiet, be perfect, be useful. And so you did. Not because you're weak, but because you're brilliant. Because somewhere deep inside, you believed that if you just did everything right, the pain would stop. But life doesn't work that way. Because pain, when unspoken, doesn't disappear. It becomes a language. And you start building your life around what it taught you. That you're only worthy when you're needed. That love has to be earned. That safety means never being fully known. And what's worse, you start to forget who you were before the pain, before the heartbreak, before the betrayal, before you learned to shrink yourself to stay safe. But you weren't always like this. There was a time you felt things freely, a time you believed in your own voice, a time you ran toward life, not away from it. And that version of you, the soft one, the wild one, the real one, is not gone. She's just waiting for you to stop pretending you're fine. Waiting for you to stop performing resilience. Waiting for you to feel what you were never allowed to feel. Because healing isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about honoring it, letting it be heard, letting it teach you not who you should be, but who you were before the world told you otherwise. In Buddhist thought, suffering is not a flaw, it's a doorway. Not something to escape, but something to enter, with courage, with presence. Because when you finally sit with your pain, without judgment, without distraction, it begins to unravel. It begins to speak. And what it says is this: you were never too much. You were never too sensitive. You were never wrong for feeling deeply. You were just unprotected, unmet, unheard. And now, as you listen, truly listen, something shifts. The pain that once felt like punishment starts to feel like a path, a map back to the parts of you thought were lost. And that's where transformation lives. Not in fixing yourself, but in finding yourself beneath the ruins of who you were forced to become. So let the tears come. Let the memories rise. Let the softness return. Because maybe strength isn't about holding it all together. Maybe real strength is letting yourself fall apart and trusting you'll still be whole on the other side. You've held on for so long, to people, to stories, to versions of yourself that were never fully yours. And maybe you believed that letting go would mean losing everything, losing love, losing meaning, losing the fragile structure of a life you worked so hard to maintain. But what if letting go isn't about losing? What if it's the first time you actually choose to live? Because the truth is, you've been carrying too much. The weight of expectations, the pressure to prove your worth, the constant tension of being what the world wants instead of what your soul needs. And it shows in your tired eyes, in the way your breath catches when no one's watching, in the way joy feels more like a memory than a right. You weren't meant to live this heavy. You weren't meant to grip everything so tightly. You weren't meant to survive every day. You were meant to feel it, fully, lightly, freely. But freedom doesn't always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like surrender, like loosening your grip on what's breaking you. Like saying, I don't have to carry this anymore. In the Buddhist path, this is not weakness, it's wisdom. The wisdom of impermanence. The knowing that nothing, no role, no pain, no identity, is fixed. Everything changes, everything passes. And the more you resist this truth, the more you suffer. Because attachment is not just to people, it's to control, to being understood, to being right, to being seen a certain way. And slowly, it becomes a prison, one you decorate with false certainty, one you stay in because it feels familiar. But walls, no matter how familiar, still keep you from the sky. So what would happen if you stopped trying to be the version of you that everyone else can digest? What if you released the need to be understood and embraced the need to be true? Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means presence without possession. It means loving without clinging. It means being yourself without needing validation as proof that you're real. It's walking barefoot into your own life, without armor, without explanation. It's feeling the wind and not needing to name it. It's letting the past dissolve without dragging it into your future. And it's terrifying, at first, because you've been taught that safety lives in control, that love must be earned, that being chosen means being edited. But none of that is true. Not at the soul level. At the soul level, love is freedom. At the soul level, truth doesn't beg to be liked. At the soul level, you don't have to be anything but real. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be accepted, you become magnetic. Not because you're performing, but because truth has a frequency that the heart remembers. So let go, not of life, but of illusion. Let go of who you think you need to be, so you can remember who you actually are. Because every time you choose your own voice over their expectations, you come home. Every time you let silence answer for you instead of fear, you come home. Every time you breathe out the weight of someone else's approval and inhale your own presence, you come home. And in that space, that sacred space between holding on and letting go, you remember, you don't need to be lighter. You just need to drop what was never yours to carry. There's a moment, quiet, barely noticeable, when you stop fighting, not out of defeat, not out of despair, but out of something far more honest, exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't ask for sleep, but for truth. The kind of exhaustion that whispers, I can't keep pretending. And in that moment, something inside you finally exhales. Like a tension that's lived in your chest for years is slowly dissolving. This is surrender. Not the dramatic kind, not the giving up kind. The kind that feels like sitting down in the middle of your own storm and saying, let it rain, I'm done running. For so long you believed healing was about control, doing it right, fixing the parts of you that felt wrong, proving you're okay. But healing doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. It asks that you stop editing your pain and start listening to it. That you stop reaching for answers and start resting in the question. Buddhism teaches that reality, as it is the ground of freedom. Not when it's beautiful, not when it's easy, but when it's real. And this is the invitation, to live in reality without flinching, to feel grief without rushing through it, to let joy touch you without fearing it will leave, to sit in the silence of your own presence and not need to be anyone else. Because the truth is, you were never broken. You were just tired of pretending to be whole in a world that rewards performance over presence. But presence, raw, unfiltered presence, is what heals. When you stop needing to make your life look meaningful, you begin to feel what is meaningful. The breath you forgot to notice, the sunset that doesn't care who's watching, the quiet relief of not needing to be understood. And in that space, you soften. You don't need to let go of everything. You just stop gripping so hard. You don't need to find a new version of yourself. You just stop running from the one that's been here all along. This is the paradox. You don't change by effort. You change by honesty, by telling yourself the truth with such tenderness that even your wounds begin to breathe again. So sit here for a while. Don't fix, don't plan, don't rush back into the noise. Just listen to the stillness between thoughts, to the warmth behind your chest, to the life that's been quietly waiting for your return. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you don't feel broken. You don't feel late. You don't feel wrong. You feel here, exactly where you are, exactly who you are, without needing to be anything else. Because maybe all this time you weren't lost. Maybe you were being led by the pain, by the silence, by the subtle sacred call to come home. And now that you're here, you can finally stop fighting. Not because everything is fixed, but because you've stopped needing to be fixed. Not because the questions are answered, but because they no longer scare you. And maybe, just maybe, this is the beginning of living. Not the life they chose for you, but the one that feels like a breath you didn't know you were holding. So I'll leave you here in this quiet, not with advice, not with steps, just one question, one doorway. What if the only thing left to do is stop fighting who you already are